Brothers and sisters, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest. I could have, made a redaction about his video, but I actually wanted to talk to him because I think we both share the same love for the game in a different way, in a different shape, in a different form. But we both love the game very deeply, and we dedicated our life to it. So today we have Joshua Schmidt. Welcome.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm chilling, man. I'm actually chilling. I don't know. I don't know if that word somewhat like the words was spreading around, but I was a professional chiller. I take chilling very seriously.
Nice.
Okay. So everyone saw your video about what's going on during this format. Basically, during YC Anaheim, there was, let's say, many known games, right?
Yeah.
Which is becoming a sort of recurring issue during those events, and it was promised to you and to us as well, because I also was of the idea that this format was very healthy. That this was actually a very good format. Then Mjolnir happens. Then Floodgate happens, right? Yeah. And I want to talk about the issue actually. Like, I want to actually go deep into the issue of the current format and discuss actually the text of cards, why certain cards are written like that, and how would we probably fix those things. And I mean, that's it, basically. How we can create a fair and balanced format. It's all gonna be a theoretical discussion.
Yeah.
But I actually love those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
And that's why. Okay, so let's start. So what do you think is the biggest the biggest problem in terms of balancing the current card game right now?
I mean, I brought up multiple things in that video, but if I had to pick the one thing that bothers me the most, I would say it's floodgates. And with floodgates, especially the ones that are like searchable, right? Because I mean, something like you already mentioned it a little bit. Like, we're gonna talk about like balancing and specific wording that maybe allows specific archetypes to work together, even though they're maybe not supposed to work together, or something like that, which you can all that's all, maybe a smaller issue as well, but we can get into that later. But I think the one issue that I have is that like certain floodgates are either not addressed at all or addressed way too late usually, right? Like, it's like, okay, we recognize Paradise Smasher is a problem in rank 5 decks, so we ban Paradise Smasher. And then, the next thing that people do who play rank 5s is they summon Mjolnir, which is something that was basically known beforehand. And we could have preemptively hit it because it was very obvious that was kind of what was going to happen. I guess obvious is the wrong word, because I also didn't anticipate it. I was also happy about the last ban list, but it's always just like every once in a while there's just like a certain card that you once knew about it. You knew it was a problem. But then, like, the format changed, they never banned it, and then you kind of you forget about it, right? It's like, okay, the Mjolnir lock has been a thing before, but while Paradise Smasher was legal, no one was doing it. So when they banned Paradise Smasher, I was happy. I was like, okay, cool, that's good. And then basically the artifact thing comes back, and then you remember, like, oh, right, there was that thing too. So
I think that's also something, like, it's also the way that Konami addressed certain cards during certain formats, right? Because as you rightfully said, the artifact was a problem already before with Sight, right? Like, and we had this example during Base, the format, right? In which
that was basically a different card, but still, the fact that artifacts are abusable happened beforehand. But even Mjolnir is something that you could have seen this coming if you paid close attention, right? The card was around for a while, and I think people have been doing the artifact Mjolnir thing in Master Duel as well, so the combo was known. I feel like people may have already played it like at the World Championships, right? Like people played Mjolnir in Master Duel at Worlds.
Yes.
And so it was kind of like obvious to me that like in hindsight, you know, of course, when the ban list came out, I was happy about it, but in hindsight, we should have all been like, yeah, why is the artifact not here? And I'm sure some people said that.
Do you think the problem is Mjolnir or the problem is Dagda? Because I was pointing Dagda when I was talking about grid-based.
Personally, I've reached a point where with these kind of discussions, like which card is the problem, I don't care anymore, because as long as they hit one side of the thing, then I'm happy. Like, yes, Mjolnir would probably be less of a problem if it wasn't searchable through Dagda. But even then, you could make the argument, you know, maybe K9 decks would just play 3 Mjolnir because it's not actually a brick in that deck. It's a level 5. Yeah. So if you open it with Jokul, you can still just lock your opponent.
I don't know if... Wait, one second. I think it locks you. I think it's mandatory when you summon it.
No, you can summon it. It's only during your opponent's turn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it works.
All right. Then it works, I guess. Okay. Yeah. So you can play 3, for example. I guess that was like kind of specific in terms of Mjolnir.
Yeah.
But like the issue of like Dagda being able to set those artifacts and then abuse of those like lingering power was an issue in the past, that, in my opinion.
Right, yes.
Like, yes, Sight was an issue, but then Lancia searchable was also another issue.
Yeah.
So it kind of snowballed to a certain point in which, now the card is again the issue, right? Like, now it's still the same card, still Dagda, but it's a different artifact.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think there's something about like extra deck monsters accessing cards from the main deck that often ends up being problematic, because you can look at so many of these. And here's once again the thing, the philosophy on those seems to be kind of inconsistent to me, because like a bunch of those cards are banned, but then a bunch of them aren't, which just basically means we're just waiting for those to become a problem eventually, right? Like, for example, we just banned King of the Feral Imps, which is a generic rank 4 to search a reptile, but we still have generic rank 4s to search Pyro, Warrior, Rock, and all of those are consistently being used to search sometimes healthier, sometimes unhealthier cards. You know, like Gallant Granite can search the Biru, but Gallant Granite is also being used to search Pachi. There you can also ask the question, is Pachi the problem? Is Gallant Granite the problem? I personally, like, I don't really care, but I also don't hate, like, Gallant Granite. I think Gallant Granite searching Nibiru is, like, kind of a cool play.
I mean, we used it to search Nibiru, right? But, like, we have also to think about the future card design of the game.
Yeah, these cards existing, especially in the extra deck, limits future card design, and you have to be careful with it. Which is funny, because in the specific case of Gallant Granite, the card that it searches was printed before it. Like, Pachi's been out for longer. So yeah, I don't know. Is Granite the problem? Is Pachi the problem? Because if they ban Pachi, they can search Barrier Statue instead and normal summon that, and kind of like the same problem. So
it's literally the same thing.
And that's an issue that, like, people have been bringing up as well, which I definitely see the point there, which is like, well, if you ban one Floodgate, people are just going to find the next, which in my opinion is 100% true. But my response to that is then, well, we got to be faster at banning those Floodgates, because then we can just go one after another. You know, like, if we ban Paradise Smasher now and people do Mjolnir immediately after, we have to get rid of Mjolnir. If after Mjolnir they do something else, then we ban that too. And eventually, if we do it at a proper pace, we're done. Like, yes, we're creating a larger ban list that way, but I feel like the result is worth it. Like, I don't care if it takes them a while to get rid of a bunch of them, but I feel like at the current pace, we're never going to catch up, because they're printing. First of all, they should stop printing any of these effects, but like, if it takes them so long to ban individual cards, then like it's going to take years and years until all of them are gone.
Okay, I would like to address first the bridge part, right? Because we were talking about different bridges. Now, the bridge part, there are several ways in which an archetype can bridge into another, right? Like, obviously, I made a sort of list of cards that I sent to you, in which there are several cards that can list into another that can bridge into another archetype. Now, not all of those are toxic per se, right?
Yeah.
Like quote unquote, there are bridges that are actually not played. For example, I'll give you like a quick rundown. Magnamut the Reliever. Magnamut the Reliever is a fusion monster that's also a fiend and light monster, and you can use it in Dracotail in order to bridge into Fiendsmith if you use polymerization.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like you can normal summon a monster, make Almirai, activate polymerization, summon Magnum Reliever, Requiem. Right? It's not a bad bridge in my opinion. It goes like minus in terms of card advantage, but it bridges into Fiendsmith that gives you back the card advantage that you lost in the process.
Yeah.
Another bridge can be Exciton Knight. Exciton Knight is another bridge that you can use Mitsurugi with 2-level sword in order to bridge into Fiendsmith again. And then we got Herald of the Arclight. Herald of the Arclight is something that you did kind of touch during your video. You were talking about Yami and Mitsurugi and how they are very fair if you take them like as a pure variant of them, but when you mix them, then it becomes a sort of issue.
Yeah.
But this is my counterpoint, right? Because in order to mix two decks, you need also to lower, like you increase the ceiling, but you also lower the consistency. Because if you looked at lower the consistency in the sense that you are not gonna always play like a baseline strategy that has like Yami as his main core. Sometimes you're gonna start with Mitsu. Sometimes you're gonna start with Yami. They have like 18 starters because I did study the deck with Cameron Neal. So I was one of the people that was testing with Cameron, and I helped him through the test in order to achieve his goal. And the point about this deck, this is the evolution in order to answer cards like Dimensional Body. Like the reason why this deck was created is not because this deck is better than Pure Mitsu. I think Pure Mitsu is not like way better than this. I think like they are both at the same level actually. But it's better into the floodgates that are being played right now.
So yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I don't hate like all aspects of that deck. I think like in hindsight, they certainly should have designed probably Mitsurugi to be a little bit less splashable, I think, because what I'm concerned with when you're combining two archetypes like that is just the power level of the deck that you create, right? And I like, of course, sometimes you start with Mitsu, sometimes you start with Yami, but ultimately the end board, if in both cases, is usually the same. So I don't actually think the consistency in that way of what you're trying to do is much different than a regular Yu-Gi-Oh deck, or like a different Yu-Gi-Oh deck that only plays one engine, because your deck basically, you start with Mitsu, you still get Yami anyways, you start with Yami, you get Mitsu anyways. So like the goal is always, you still try to make the same board every time. It's just like your spreadsheet combo changes depending on which of your starters you've opened. And I honestly, I see the advantage to playing the deck. I'm not saying like it's a bad deck or whatever, and I see the advantage certainly of playing around the card like Dimensional Barrier, but I don't know if that's an argument for a deck like that, because at that point it's just like, okay, we're just using a Floodgate or a Lingering Floodgate to justify this, which they could just make archetypes that don't lose to D-Barrier, right? That would kind of be the same thing, but they would have more control over the power level of those than they have over the power level of Mitsu Yami, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think that deck was intended by the designers.
I also don't think it was intended, but they intended the bridge into Mitsurugi from other decks. I'll give you an example. Ashlan, U1000. They intended the Mitsurugi to be bridgeable.
Yes. Well, I mean, okay, sure. I mean, fine. But in that case, I think don't you think some of those decks are too powerful?
Okay, so if we're talking about Mitsurugi Yami, I don't think it's breakable with N3sh per se, but it has some weakness into Purulia, and it's weak. It's weak into multiple, like a combination of board breakers. Like Dark Ruler in my opinion, is very strong against this variant of the deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because if they do the combo, and like you actually have to go a spreadsheet combo for this, because if you activate Dark Ruler, you actually lose 90% of your board because you cannot use prayers to rebuild.
Yeah.
So I don't think the combo that the deck does is superior of the combo of Mitsurugi. The end bottom. I think if you if you do the full combo of Mitsurugi and if you do the full combo of Mitsurugi Yami, I think it's like if you are an experienced player, like I'm winning that.
Yeah.
Like it just gives you the illusion of being able to play the game, which is what people in MTG did during those low formats with the man. But I don't want to really go into that. But the point is that it's just the illusion of play the game, which is from a streaming perspective way more enjoyable to watch. So I guess I agree on that side.
Right. I mean,
there is also...
I do agree with you that I don't think I would have made a video complaining if it was just about Mitsurugi. Like Mitsurugi Yami was just like a side thing where I was like, okay, they probably should have been a little bit more careful with the restrictions on Habakiri, because it's not just Mitsuyami, it's also just like one Habakiri in Master Duel in literally 2 days is going to be, I don't know, whatever you want. Like Appalooza.
Unfortunately, one Habakiri Master Duel is gonna be one of the most unhealthy card ever printed.
Yeah.
And I do see that point because like we have Zombie Vampire, we still have like Kira Elements, for example. And like it's bad, like what they are doing in Master Duel, like if you like want to talk about Master Duel, is like they started with Millennium, right? And then after Millennium, we got Magisto. And then after Magistus, now we're gonna have Mitsurugi. Like they're basically replacing the Millennium engine that goes Zombie Vampire Turbo into that engine.
What Habakiri is doing at the moment, I think does teach us a lesson of they do need to put more locks on very powerful individual cards, especially in a time where we do live in a time where more decks are doing one card combos. You know, that's fine. I found my my peace with that, even though I was complaining about that in the beginning when the first couple of those were popping up. But like the fact that like you have so many one card starters now means you are a lot more free in deck building, which means you can play like you can play multiple engines together. And if you draw a one card starter for Mitsu and a one card starter for another engine, you can just do both. You know, like there's Mitsu Yami, Mitsu Malice, Mitsu Ryziel, whatever. Like because there's just no restrictions on the Mitsurugi card, so you basically have there's nothing stopping you from making a full Malice board and have the full Mitsurugi interruptions next to it. And the only downside would be that you don't draw 2 to 3 card combos of your archetype as consistently, but you don't need to do that anymore in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because usually cards play on their own.
From my perspective, I think that bridging into another archetype, it's not that bad. It's not like it's personally something that I love.
I can see that. I like the creativity behind it too. I think the deck building aspect there is very fun, and I can also definitely see the argument of being able to, for example, make archetypes more resilient to certain problems in the format, right? Like if you identify Dimensional Barrier is a card that's being played a lot. I like this Yami deck. Can I somehow make it more resilient into Dimensional Barrier? And then it's like, okay, well, I can fit another engine into that. That is an attractive point about that specific thing. I'm just a little worried that in order to facilitate that, they have to make cards that are just way too generic in general, and then we run into problems at other ends, where like, you know, a Habakiri just does way too much on its own as well.
Okay, now let's talk about locks then, okay? You mentioned, right, talking about the different locks that you want more locks on cards, right? But we do have locks.
It depends. I'd want, or rather, the way I'm looking at it is I feel like if they want a certain deck to be played in a certain way and they balance it around that, right? Then they should make sure that the deck is played in that way.
Okay, do you expect someone who actually makes the card and the effects to have the same knowledge of us that started in 2004?
No, but then I guess they should rather be, I think they should play it more safe, I suppose.
Okay. And let's talk about, I actually want to talk about the locks, right? Because they did try to put a lock on Mitsurugi, right? Soft lock, if that makes sense. Like, you can only use reptiles.
I mean, to activate that one card, yes, but
Yes, okay, Mirror, Mitsurugi Mirror. Prayers to Tribute. Mitsurugi Ritual, both the effects.
none of those
Right.
cards have locks, though.
I mean, it's not locks, like Ritual Summon Reptile Monsters, Tribute Reptile Monsters. Like,
Yeah,
it revolves around the reptile.
Yeah.
Revolves around the reptile. Now,
Yeah.
if we want to talk about locks, let's talk about an archetype that did receive probably the most support in Yu-Gi-Oh! And still not competitively playable, Hero.
Yeah.
Hero got Fusion Destiny, for example, one of the many cards that locks you.
Mm-hmm.
Hero does not have only one lock, it has a double lock. It has a lock in Hero and a lock in Dark Hero.
Yeah.
Right? From Fusion Destiny, from the link to Extra Hero Cross Crusader. Like, we got those kind of locks.
Yeah.
Then we got Heraldric, right? Heraldric is an archetype that had so much potential, in my opinion, if it was not for his lock, which is one of the harshest to lock him up. Like, that's the opposite, the extreme of a lock is the fact that when it's not only locked in archetype, but you're also locked in being able to XYZ summon only using the heraldic monster, and you can only summon numbers, or you can only summon for some of the cards psychic, right? Which is, in my opinion, like the other extreme. Like, there are three different locks applied on heraldic. There are 2 locks applied on Hero, and there is only 1 lock for Exosister. But that was enough to actually not make the archetype relevant in the future.
I don't think the problem there is the locks, to be honest with you.
I mean, we got an entire pool of cards for Hero, and still not playable.
Yeah, it's because it has too many weaknesses, but not because it's not locking you. Because it's locking you. It just dies to hand traps and Nibiru too hard. But the end boards that deck is capable of making, if they were more resilient to hand traps, would 100% be meta.
But, like, don't you think that the issue of why the deck is not being able to play around those end traps is the fact that your lock is too hard, so you cannot bridge into, like, other stuff?
No.
Right. Okay, then what about DDD? DDD, do you think it's the same issue? We got a support that, in my opinion, is probably one of the best support that Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever gave to a deck. And the deck is not relevant right now. I think it's a good deck, but still not relevant.
I don't think archetypes are unplayable because they have locks.
I don't think they're unplayable.
I think at that point, I think the problem is then that they are making other decks that, like, purposely don't have locks, which then obviously become better than them.
I want just to understand when it's too much and when it's not enough. That's why I'm doing those comparisons.
So
I gave you an extreme.
I like when 2 decks have synergy with each other without being directly connected. As long as it doesn't completely explode the power level of a certain deck. Like, for example, Sword Soul and Tenny. Those were 2 archetypes that technically don't have anything to do with each other, but they both had pretty good worm synergies, and you could play them together, and that created a stronger deck than pure Tenny or pure Sword Soul. And that is completely fine. And in some ways, those cards could even be starters for each other. They had ways to bridge into each other, you know, like Tenny had Sword Soul had ways to send Tennies from deck to the graveyard, and I think there was a Tenny spell, like the Vessel thingy or the Heavenly Dragon Circle or whatever, that could sometimes access you Sword Soul cards from your deck as a starter. That sort of stuff, in my opinion, if it's well designed, is awesome.
I think you were talking about Tenny, right?
Yeah.
And the Yazi connection, right? Because you can pop itself and you can summon the one that summons the tokens.
Yeah.
Now, Yazi into Tomare, which was a strategy that was used in Based, it was used by Christian Urena and from other several players into Mare that could, like, Mare can bridge into other stuff, by the way. So, I mean, I guess you know, but, like, you mentioned that, and that was a bridge. Was that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think Mare in itself is a fair card. I think it's more about generic end board pieces than if you look at those combo decks.
When do we stop in terms of card design, and when do we say it's enough? Or when do we say it's too much instead?
I think it's hard to say when exactly a deck becomes too broken. I feel like everyone has a different feeling for that. But I just feel like when a deck is able to achieve much more than... I mean, if a deck is completely unbreakable, I personally don't think it's fun. But sometimes those
but then
decks
I
are
have to
fine.
ask you, what's your definition of unbreakable?
Well, I mean, if you just can't realistically beat it without drawing like
Okay,
Exodia.
but like, you know, there are some decks that are very weak to entraps, and there are some, but very strong against breakers, and there are some decks that are very strong into breakers.
I was about to say that there are some decks that have those kind of boards, but have restrictions or have downsides, like they are terrible into Droll and Fuva, and even into the quote unquote fair hand traps, and that's why they're not meta. You know, Hero is one of those examples. I think the Hero end board is very cringe, but I wouldn't call Heroes an unbalanced deck, because it has weaknesses to hand traps. But those types of decks that end up being meta are the ones that are too resilient to those cards.
Okay, so how would you position the Ryzel deck Protoss Turbo with it's not a Ryzel deck, it's the Onomato Ryzel deck.
Yeah.
Which is, in my opinion, weak into Fua, weak into Purulia, and it has a strong resilience, but into Fua and Purulia, it's weak in my opinion. So
it's
how would you...
I mean, that deck is... Once again, there's a difference between unbalanced and, in my opinion, not healthy. Because what you're saying is true. The deck has downsides. And overall, if you just look at its win rate and how successful it is, it's probably not unbalanced as a whole. Because I don't think it's winning like a crazy percentage of games that other decks aren't winning. Like it's not the best deck at going second, and it's at going first. It has silver bullets against it, like Droll, like Fuva, like Purulia. So if you resolve one of those cards against it, you are probably more likely to win than you are to lose. So overall, it's probably a balancing wise, just in terms of win percentage, it's probably a fine deck. It is still not a deck that I enjoy playing against, and I do think that I'm not alone with that. And I also don't think that I don't think that the win rate is the only thing that you should balance by. Because if we just go by win rate, then we would have a lot of FTKs legal. And there are some legal. I know you're going to say we have some FTKs, but they also ban some FTKs.
You know that I was going to say that.
No, and that's the thing, right? I do think there is a... I do think there's a line where even if a deck isn't like winning 80% of the time, if it's not fun to play against, then what's your argument for having it in the game?
But like, yeah, fun is a very interesting wording, right? Because there are people that love playing stun,
right?
People that love playing combos,
right?
Like fun it's not something that we can put on a scale.
But it would be, I think it's very important to try and find out what the majority of people find fun, because ultimately I think that's the most important thing for the health of the game, is that the people that play it find it fun, and the people that watch it needs to look like fun to them. And I think even if you only play against one Onomat Ryzeal in Swiss in a tournament, and you lose the dice roll to it, that can heavily impact your experience of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And if we have too many of these decks, eventually it reaches a critical mass where you will go to a tournament and every time you'll face one of these, even though each individual one of these decks is not popular enough or not strong enough to actually be like everywhere. Like, you know, there's at a certain point, if we have too many of these, you're just going to see them way too consistently, and they're not going to be fun to play against for a lot of people. Not everybody, but for a lot of people.
Okay, now, how does Konami recognize if the community think if a deck is fun or not? I think on Master Duel it's very easy, right? Like you can look at the people that play the actual game, right? Like when Blue Eyes came out, you saw a spike. When Malice came out, you saw like the most absurd downfall ever, right?
I feel I think when it came out, people still played, but after I think it dropped.
Yeah.
From the stuff
Yeah.
that I've seen. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
you're right. Of course, it is easier to see when it's digital and you can see how many people play your game.
It's not like they can go on a YouTube channel like and just watch someone say, "Trust me, bro." Like the community
but
thinks that.
what would you say, like from being in the community, just from being active on the internet in Yu-Gi-Oh? Do you think
I have a very strong opinion on that.
Do you think the Yu-Gi-Oh community likes Floodgates, like the majority, or not?
No, I think that the Yu-Gi-Oh card designer and the people that make the ban list should get in contact with people that will actually go towards, or they have the most success in Yu-Gi-Oh,
right,
and ask for actual advice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I actually think about.
Yeah.
And
so what you're saying is
that we have more knowledge.
You do think the community would prefer Floodgates being gone?
No, I don't think that the community would like to have floodgates, no. But talking about floodgates, then we're gonna touch a very specific point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I did send you a list.
Yeah.
But we're talking about over hundreds of floodgates.
Yeah.
Some are very meta relevant,
yeah.
Some are not.
Mm-hmm.
I would classify those as Series A floodgates, B that could be played if you don't play the A,
mm-hmm.
and then the ones that are actually not playable because those were played like in 2005.
Yeah.
All right. So touching the points of floodgates, I want also to address that there is no way that they're gonna ban Fisher or Macrocosm. And you're gonna ask N3sh why? Because there is actually support for Fisher or Macrocosm, and there is a new floodgate that's gonna come to the search as Macrocosm. And that's the OC. Chaos Distill.
Ah, that thing. Yeah, no, I remember reading it, yeah.
Yeah. So they are still gonna design cards that are floodgate related, but they can design decks that don't lose to those floodgates, right?
Yeah.
Like Mitsurugi doesn't lose to Fish, doesn't lose to Shifter, doesn't lose to Macrocosm.
Yeah. Well, the problem is if there's too many floodgates, then it's going to be impossible to design a deck that doesn't have one against it. In my opinion, I mean, you're touching on a very important point already, which is the fact that like there are floodgates that are A tier basically because they are being played and because they are so strong. And then there's floodgates that are just waiting behind those that are not being played right now because they are just worse than those that are being played. And
I mean, an example could be Tyrant Tamiake.
Yeah.
Tyrant, the Tyrant floodgate, right? Like those are one of the most oppressive floodgates ever printed, but they are not played because those are played or in a very specific strategy, or they are played when other floodgates are not an option. Like Tamiake says, tribute a monster. Neither play can special summon a level 6 or higher monster. And if you have 3 more cards in hand, destroy this card, which is a very bad downside for a floodgate. But like it can stall enough for you to win the game. Like against Mitsurugi, you flip this card, tribute a monster, they cannot play the game.
You can summon 2 level 4s and make Tornado Dragon, for example.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
And I think that's the point. That's the point, right? There is a reason why the popular floodgates are popular and the unpopular floodgates are unpopular is because they have loopholes. It's because there might be outs to them that you can piece together. For example, I don't know, lose 1 turn or something is something that most decks would find annoying, but it kind of works like a Baguska, you know, like it would kind of like, it's not forever, and you can like SP Little Knight it, and then, you know, you lose resources in the process, but for most decks, it would theoretically be outable.
Okay.
And so what I don't want them, I mean, in an ideal world, of course, like I would say like, okay, get rid of all of these, but realistically, I think if we get rid of the most popular ones, if people are then forced to play the worst floodgates, the outable ones, or the ones that have downsides, I think then it would already be a very good step in the right direction, because if my opponent flips lose 1 turn, usually the game doesn't instantly end. Or if my opponent activates, I don't know, Power Sink Stone or something like that, right? It's like they're annoying to play against, and I would prefer not to, but I feel like there's a difference between, like, if you activate there can be only 1 against my deck with just 1 type, there's nothing I can do. Whereas if you activate lose 1 turn, I have a theoretical game to be played.
Okay, so would you put there can be only one and power filter on the same level? Power filter says neither player can special summon monsters with 1000 or less.
No, I would not.
Why?
Because power filter is against the right deck. Power filter probably feels just as oppressive as there can be only one.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's a reason why we see there can be only one in almost every format and power filter almost never. It's because power filter is more specific. Therefore, you can never really main deck it because you can never rely on it being good against every deck you play against. And even in your side deck, it's going to be much harder to justify a card like power filter because usually in the side deck, you're trying to side deck cards that are good against a lot of decks. You're not trying to play like a power filter, which only hits maybe one deck in the format, unless that deck is like by far the most popular. Then there might still be a format. Like, I don't know, I think people played this in like UBell format sometimes. And like, sure,
yeah,
it would be annoying for that specific format. Power filter would be a very annoying card, and I would hate it. I would hate playing against it if my deck completely lost to it. I would still hate it. But practically, it would happen a lot less often, which I think is already like maybe that's the middle ground. You know, maybe the middle ground between, you know, okay, some people want floodgates in the games. The Konami thinks that floodgates have a place in this game, or maybe some people need floodgates to win, and that's why they are in the game. Or whatever. Maybe the middle ground is, well, then just get rid of the most oppressive ones. Just get rid of the ones that work every time. You know, like you can put rivalry, there can be only one, goes and match, skill drain, D-barrier into your side deck in almost every format, and it's never terrible. It's never a bad thing to have if your deck works under it.
Right. Talking about RP Featherstorm, there are many ways to make this card very accessible, right?
Yeah.
From Trust and every, like, for example, Yami can go into Fucho. Like, they always have 2 spar level 1s on the board. They can turn into an IPO and into a Fucho. When they turn into a Fucho, the game is over. Now, I think this is the extreme of what is wrong in terms of card design.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree on that. And you say that something that's acceptable, it's something that counters only a very specific deck. Right, and it's not a generic like there can be only one, like a rivalry, like an anti-spell fragrance, like a goes and match.
Look, acceptable is a harsh word that I wouldn't say, but it would be. I think it would be a lot better for the game if only those were a thing. Like, because the problem with this is, I know I'm not stupid. I know we're not getting rid of all of those cards. You know, I know. I mean,
I know that you know. Like I'm trying, like also for the people to I want this to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
Because. Like, for sure, we're not getting rid of those. Like, Fisher is staying, Macrocosmo is staying, because there is, like, the distillery that's going to come. A different dimensional ground is going to stay. I'm sorry to say that. The one that we could get rid of, I think it's Dimensional Barrier. I think Dimensional Barrier could actually go. I think Archetype Featherstorm could actually go. I think Shifter is staying, to be honest.
I think the problem is that at the moment, there's way too many of them that are way too effective against way too many decks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it is just... Cards like Dimensional Fissure, the Different Dimension Ground, Dimensional Barrier, Harpy's Featherstorm, and so on and so forth. These cards just work against basically every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's way too many decks that can play those cards as well because they are far too generic. And so the result of that is that basically every single round that you play, you expect your opponent to side deck at least 1 or 2 of these cards in. And so basically, and since more games in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are played after siding, it's just you reach a critical mass eventually where like every single match, or not every single match, but a lot of matches in a tournament are going to be impacted by these cards.
How would you like design a Floodgate?
I wouldn't.
That's not too oppressive. That's not too oppressive.
The problem is floodgates are impossible to design well. And I'll tell you why. Because these kind of cards have to win you the game on the spot. If they don't, it's not worth playing.
Then just go for ultra specific ones.
I guess.
And in some formats are gonna be bad, and
a couple of ultra specific ones, then like you're gonna know if your deck is weak to that one specific floodgate, and if your deck is very popular, you can expect people to play it. You have to prepare for it, I guess. Which is still weird, but it's better than if people can play a Floodgate that basically works in almost every match.
Was Winda ever considered to be able to be banned? Like, I think Winda was also like one of those bad floodgates in the past.
Originally when Winda came out, it wasn't even that floodgatey because the format was so much slower. So like in 2014, 2015 Shaddolls, Winda was considered more like a card that was very good against some decks, but not good against some others. Like, for example, if you played against BA, it was very good. But then if you played a Shaddol Mirror or you played against Cleafort, like it basically didn't matter. So, but over time, of course, nowadays, if Winda was super accessible for every single deck, then it would definitely have to go as well, in my opinion. But the thing with Winda is, like, it's kind of in the middle, I guess, where it takes a decent amount of commitment to play the card, and it's not as easily accessible.
All right. So for future card design, what's your message?
I guess if I had to keep it somewhat realistic, I think just get rid of the obviously broken floodgates that we've talked about just now, and don't make new ones, because we have enough. I think
we do have enough.
I think we have enough.
We do have enough.
In general, of course, there is a problem with game design in general, where like you can never test as much as the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community. Like, I think within the first day of a new card being announced, that there's probably 100 times the games that are being played with it than they ever do in testing, because they simply don't have enough people or enough time to play as many games as the Yu-Gi-Oh community as a whole, right? So of course we are gonna find stuff to maybe abuse certain things, or if they're not careful enough on something, then we can always find like a broken target for it or whatever.
That's why I suggest they should like actually, you know, ask or hire people that are very invested into the game, like you, for card design. And you know, like, that's my personal opinion. I think that people that do play the game at your level should be involved in those things.
I guess that could be one solution, but even then, like, I would miss some of these things as well. 100%.
It's fine if you miss something. It's fine, but you won't miss as much.
Right? Maybe.
If that makes sense.
Maybe. But the thing is, like, a lot of the cards we're talking about right now, however, are cards from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes,
so
exactly.
A lot of the things that are happening right now are not due to currently bad design decisions. That's something I want to emphasize on. Like, I said that in my video as well. I think in 2025, Yu-Gi-Oh has had a huge improvement in terms of archetype design. And I also, that was some of my favorite parts of the last few Forbidden and Limited lists. Was I really loved how they addressed certain archetypes, sometimes even way sooner than I expected, you know, because typically it's always like, people always say like, oh, Konami always wants you to buy the newest archetypes, that's why they will never hit him on the ban list or whatever. Like, they hit Malice and Ryzeal before they even got support in Alliance Insight.
So you don't think that they are keeping the game unbalanced to sell more packs, just to have like the most broken archetype in the last pack?
I don't even think the game is unbalanced right now at its core. Like, I think the archetype, like, there's no archetypes that are like completely unbalanced over other archetypes. I have more of an issue with the philosophy regarding floodgates and searchable floodgates as well. It's like, we don't need Pachi for people to play Mitsurugi. We don't need Dimensional Fissure for people to play Mitsurugi. We don't need Mjolnir for people to play K9.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, so, but like in terms of power level, Noroi, for example, right? Like, I think it's one of the most busted normal summon ever print.
Yes, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the K9 archetype. Like, I think when I say I like the new archetype designs in 2025, I think K9 is a little bit of a like, that's the one exception, because I don't enjoy the fact that like basically every K9 starter means you just make a Ripper which negates hand traps, and then the pure K9 deck is basically not strong enough. So the only way to play K9 at the moment is to splash it in other decks, which means you just make a Ripper before you combo to negate hand traps for your other combo, which is kind of what K9 Crystron does, right? Which in one hand, I feel like that was intended with K9 because there's no locks on K9s. And they also are specifically worded to work in a way like just special any other level 5, right? But I don't like that. Like basically, I'd be fine with K9 if Ripper just didn't negate hand traps. Basically, I think that part's kind of cringe. Like I think if you're setting up for a combo, I feel like summoning a hand trap negate first thing and then comboing, I feel like it's weird.
I think you should be able to beat the end trap naturally as the combo goes. Like you should actually eat the end trap and not being able to negate it. That's how I think about it.
That's what a lot of other archetypes do nowadays, right? Like that's what like decks have choke points now for Nibiru, where like the Nibiru makes their board a little bit smaller, but Nibiru usually never ends your entire turn. And the same is true for Ash and stuff like that. That part is fine to me, usually. When a deck like naturally, like for example, the way Yummy plays against Nibiru, in my opinion, is how it should be. Like when you have a Nibiru against Yummy, you are basically always able to activate it. And you need to
decide if you want to trade with an Herald or...
Yeah, exactly. You can be like, okay, I'm going to make your board smaller, or I'm going to wait until you make the Herald and then Nib, so you have to negate my Nib and then your Herald is gone, which is limited to 1. Like that's fine. That's cool in my opinion. But when you just play a combo deck where like the first action basically, like your first extra deck summon always before 5 is going to be Ripper to negate a hand trap. At this point, like the only times it's ever interesting is when your opponent has like Nib plus Ash or something, and you have to make the decision like, oh, do I negate this Ash now? And then play into Nibiru or whatever. But in an average game, it's just not that interesting. So
okay, yeah. And then one last question, because I think I kept you enough.
All right.
You mentioned an emotional connection to the game despite its flaws, right? What keeps you personally motivated to stay involved in the community?
I mean, there's a combination of reasons, obviously. But like the reason why I voice my concerns and don't just quit because of it is because I do love the game. And because even though these cards exist that I'm criticizing, there is still a lot of games where it just doesn't happen, you know, like there's it's not like I'm not pretending like Dimensional Barrier happens in every single game, you know. There's games where they don't draw it, there's games where the floodgate isn't activated, or where the broken combo is stopped and they can't search the Protoss because you Huva them or something and they can't commit to all of that or whatever. Like there's always behind those games, there's always a lot of good Yu-Gi-Oh being played, which is also something that I experienced at YCS Lille. Now, is the reason for that because people were still playing the fair decks in YCS Lille because some of this wasn't discovered yet? I don't know. But for the most part, my experience at YCS Lille was a different one. You know, like I didn't get floodgated very often.
It's more because NA is more combo.
Maybe.
Europe is more mid-range.
Maybe, but it's just like, my point is basically, let's say 60 or 70% of Yu-Gi-Oh games are really good. And I'm complaining about the 30 to 40%. For me, the game is still worth playing for the 60-70% of good games. But I still want it to be better. I want it to improve, and I don't see a reason why that percentage can't be higher. You know, like I would still rather have the game be 80 to 90% good games than 60 or 70. And if those cards are the reason for that, then I'm gonna complain about those cards. Is basically the reason. So it's not discouraging me from playing the game. And I also know that in some formats it's better, and in some formats it's worse. I'm just out here asking the question, like, you know, we should have learned this lesson, especially Dimensional Barrier. Maybe the reason why it's popping up right now is because the YCS Anaheim stream was pretty bad, and because Dimensional Barrier specifically is a card that, like, it pops up like every 2 or 3 formats. It's just when there's a format where there's a lot of decks that focus on one summoning mechanic, especially if it isn't Link, because that's another thing, right? One big thing with Dimensional Barrier, with the introduction of Links, it became a lot worse. But the thing is, nowadays, people love these archetypes that don't Link summon, right? Like people love Exceed summons, Fusion summons, Ritual summons. These archetypes are fun to play, like the Branded, Draco Tail, Mitsurugi, whatever. Like it's a fun concept to people. People like it, and Konami knows this, and Konami designs archetypes that do
But they also know are a
one
problem,
thing.
as you explained in the Genesis format, that they address points system to the. Yeah, I kind of crazy that they put like pot of prosperity more points than pot of greed, but that's another story. Kind of
No, but
crazy.
it's like it's just I love this game, and I just want it to be better. And I think it can be better. That's basically all I'm saying.
I mean, that's my dream too. I mean, we express our voices in different ways.
Yeah.
You are very vocal, but also very polite. I'm not. That's it. I hope you had fun with this discussion.
Yeah.
And for you guys, I wish you a wonderful day. And this was N3sh and Joshua Schmidt talking about the form. Kiss, kiss.
Bye-bye.